Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, we've got a loaded one on tap for you today. Phillip Rivers. I don't know if you heard the rumors. Could he be the Colts' saving grace? Could he be their quarterback moving forward for the rest of the year? We'll discuss that. Also, could the Texans be playing the future Colts quarterback in the coming weeks? I'll discuss that. DeMeco calls out the offense and says, this is not good enough. I'll get into exactly what he had to say after the Chiefs game. And then at the end of the show, I don't want to always be negative, so I'm going to do some positive Texans content. Obviously, Texans, they're in the playoff hunt. They're not more in the hunt. They're in the 7th seed right now in the AFC playoff picture. So I'm going to tell you some Texans who deserve just a little bit more love. Before I get going, though, make sure you hit that subscribe button. ESPN, they're dropping articles on everything that I'm talking about today. But half of it is behind a paywall. You have to pay $120 a year on ESPN Plus. Or just hear me out here, or you can pay $0 a year here at Texans Today and get all the same content. Seems like a pretty good deal. All you got to do, go down and hit that subscribe button. Everything that ESPN Plus talks about, everything that ESPN covers around your Texans, you know you're going to get it here at Texans Today, your one-stop shop for everything Houston Texans. Why not subscribe, save the money, and get the same exact content over here at Texans Today? All right, first, let's talk about Phillip Rivers. Ian Rappaport came out with this tweet yesterday. The Colts are planning to bring potential Hall of Fame QB Phillip Rivers into their facility Tuesday to work out to see if he may join the practice squad. Per me and Mike Garafolo, this is real. Daniel Jones' season is over, and backup Riley Leonard will start, but Rivers may be an option. And, I mean, pun intended, is Phillip Rivers off his rocker? Is he really trying to make a comeback into the NFL? He's 44 years old, hasn't played in 5 years. The last time he played football was 2020. He played 16 seasons for the Chargers in San Diego. Last season that he played in 2020 was for the Colts, and he's been rumored to return over the past couple of years. The 49ers a couple of years ago, whenever they lost to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, and they had all their quarterbacks out with injury, it was rumored that Phillip Rivers might return to help the San Francisco 49ers in that instance. And then, obviously there's all the jokes about him having, I think he has like a dozen kids. The Rivers household, if the house is a rockin', don't come a knockin' over there with Phillip Rivers. But, I mean, seriously, this would be insane if the Colts actually sign Phillip Rivers to be their quarterback. And the Texans play the Colts in Week 18. If Phillip Rivers is the quarterback for the Colts, I mean, somebody get this man a life alert, because I don't know if he's going to be able to get back up after all the hits he's going to take up against this Texans defense. At 44 years old, I know everybody thinks, this guy can come back. Tom Brady played till this age. Drew Brees played till this age. Peyton Manning was, past 40 years old. There's a reason why they're the anomaly and not the standard, because once you hit 40, you're more than likely not capable athletically to play in the National Football League. So Riley Leonard, he's the starter, but also he's injured. So where does that leave the Colts? I mean, their current backup quarterback, who's been on the practice squad throughout the year, Brett Rippon, former Boise State legend. So, local product there. But I think all these options that I'm going to give you right here might be a little bit more viable than a Phillip Rivers. You could sign Ryan Tannehill. The one that makes the most sense is this one right here, in my opinion, Taylor Heinicke. I don't know why you wouldn't sign him and, roll forward with him. He's been a backup. He's been a starter in multiple locations with the Commanders, with the Falcons. And, he's not going to wow you, but I think he's on the same level of like a Daniel Jones was whenever he entered free agency and joined the Indianapolis Colts. I think that's kind of that same kind of tier level of quarterback. And then here are the ones that have been rumored and kind of floating around. And you see they have the asterisks next to their name. They're currently on other teams, and it would basically be, the teams that they're on currently showing good faith and being like, you're not going to do anything with us this season, so we'll release you and give you a chance to start. Derek Carr with the New Orleans Saints, Joe Flacco currently with the Cincinnati Bengals, and then Russell Wilson with the New York Giants. These would be long shots, and like I said, it would have to be those teams in good faith doing a solid to these guys and saying, you know what, we'll release you so you can play with the other teams. Especially in Derek Carr's circumstance with his contract. I don't think the Saints do that, but these would be the other options that I would say are more viable for the Colts rather than a Phillip Rivers. But go down in the comment section. Who should the Colts sign at quarterback? Or who do you think they're going to sign at quarterback? Is it a Phillip Rivers? Is it somebody else? Let me know down in the comment section. I'm interested to see what y'all have to say of who you think or who you would want the Colts to sign at quarterback. Maybe if you're a Texans fan like me, I mean, you'd be okay with them signing a Phillip Rivers at quarterback. Let me know down in the comment section. Now, speaking of the Colts, could the Texans actually be facing the Colts quarterback coming up here in just a moment? Possibly. Because as we look at the Texans' next 4 games, they play the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Chargers, and then the Colts. And I think the Texans could be facing maybe the Colts' future quarterback. And maybe I'm grasping at straws. Maybe I'm looking too much into things. I'm not talking about Geno Smith. I'm talking about the Arizona Cardinals and maybe cheating a little bit because he's technically not playing. He'll be on the sidelines. But I'm talking about Kyler Murray. Ian Rappaport had this. Kyler Murray is not expected to play again this season as he's not progressing as hoped per Jonathan Gannon. And I looked into it a little bit. I looked at, a couple Cardinals beat reporters. Kyler Murray was practicing and looking actually pretty good leading up to the Dallas Cowboys game with the Arizona Cardinals. It was kind of a weird situation that's going on with Murray and the Cardinals. And I think the Cardinals are more sitting him out because they don't want the injury guarantees with his contract. They're looking to move on from Kyler Murray this offseason. And with them trying to get rid of Kyler Murray, I think they're looking at another quarterback. And with the Colts, they traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner. So they don't have a first in this year's draft or in 2027. Also, Daniel Jones, he was seen as, the long-term option, maybe like the, next 4 or 5 years option in Indianapolis. But at the same time, he tore his Achilles. So the likelihood of him being ready for next year, the start of next year, it's very, very slim. So the Colts are going to be looking for a new quarterback this offseason. I think that's Kyler Murray. If you put all the dots together, the Cardinals, they're probably going to release or try to trade Kyler Murray this offseason. I think they're going in another direction. Hell, they're starting Jacoby Brissett over him when, they're claiming it's due to injury. But this is exactly what the Las Vegas Raiders did with Derek Carr. They, at the end of his time in Las Vegas, was like, hey, we're going to sit you out due to injury. But it was more to prevent further injury because in these contracts, they have, injury clauses where if they get injured in the season, going into the offseason, portions of their contract are guaranteed. I think that's what the Cardinals are doing with Kyler Murray. And I think as we look into this offseason, it makes a lot of sense for the Colts to look at a guy like Kyler Murray, somebody who I think would fit well into this Shane Steichen offense in Indianapolis. There's a need at quarterback there. Other teams that need a quarterback, like the Raiders, like the Jets, they have the draft capital to go up and make moves to get like Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore this offseason. So I think very well we could be seeing the Colts' future quarterback this next season just on the sidelines for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, coming up in just a moment, DeMeco calls out the offense after the Chiefs game. I'll tell you exactly what he had to say here in just a moment, but couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors over at Prize Picks. I love Prize Picks. My producer, Cullen, he absolutely adores them. So get started today with our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of the year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, and it's all happening at once while you and I are out here making decisions every day. What to eat, which games to watch, what gifts to buy. Still need to buy my wife her gifts. There's one place where it feels good to be right. That's over at Prize Picks. It's your fantasy season already over. My team is cooked, but with Prize Picks, I don't have to wait until next year's draft. Prize Picks lets you play fantasy football every week. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections every week. No draft required. And if you're wondering, Jeremy, what kind of lineup are you putting out for this week? This is my lineup for Texans Cardinals this week. I'm going with C.J. Stroud. More on the rush yards, only at 7.5. I think, one scramble, he'll be able to get that. Dalton Schultz, I'm using one of the new features on Prize Picks. It's called Stacks. You can choose one player, multiple projections. So I'm going Schultz more on the receiving yards, more on the rushing and receiving touchdowns. Should have had a touchdown against the Chiefs. Got called back on a BS call. Danielle Hunter, I'm going more on the .75 sacks. And then Jacoby Brissett, I'm going less on his fantasy score. You can use my lineup and make your own. Just do it over at Prize Picks today. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All that information down in the comments and description of today's show. DeMeco Ryans called out the Texans offense after that Chiefs game, and for good reason. As we look at the stats up against Kansas City, not very good. 268 total yards, 186 pass yards, only 82 rush yards, 8 of 18 on third down, and in the red zone, they were only 2 of 4. And maybe the biggest indictment on this Texans offense, look at the third quarter of that game. The Texans' third quarter might be the worst offensive quarter all year long. They had -2 yards on offense. -2 yards. And this is what DeMeco Ryans had to say to Aaron Wilson after that Chiefs game. A lot of things we need to improve offensively. We need to operate much faster. It's not good enough for us. We have to operate more efficiently and more urgently on that side of the football. A lot of room for improvement there, and we need to see that improvement very quickly. I think, DeMeco, I'm glad he said something. And I have a lot of respect for him coming out and saying that about the offense after this game because, we're not idiots. Texans fans, we're not dumb. We see the game, we watch the game, and we know this offense, even though it's getting it done right now, if we have any hopes for doing anything in the playoffs, doing anything, in January and February of this season as a team, this offense must play better. It's not an option. That third quarter, if that happens in a playoff game, donezo. You're not winning, especially against the better teams in the NFL that can actually capitalize on a quarter like that. You can't let that happen. So can the Texans win with this offense? My answer is no moving forward in the playoffs. If they play like that, if they play like they did in the second half against the Chiefs, no. And I know my tweet around CJ Stroud, everybody's freaking out. Oh, you said CJ Stroud played bad, this, that, or the other. Yes, I called out CJ Stroud for his play during the Chiefs game. I think he would tell you he played a probably C+ game himself. I think CJ Stroud has a higher standard for himself as well. But as a lot of you mentioned in the replies in my tweet, it wasn't just CJ Stroud. The offensive line could not block worth a lick in that third quarter. Chris Jones was absolutely their daddy. Couldn't do anything. They couldn't run block, couldn't open any lanes for Woody Marks. Just all around. The play calling I didn't think was good by Nick Caley in that third quarter. I think he got out-schemed by Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs DC, badly. And overall, this Texans defense, generational. The Texans offense, you just need to be, good. We just need you to hold up your end of the bargain. I mean, if we want to be like the 2000 Ravens and win the Super Bowl purely based off defense, I think, they at least had, some good offensive output. They had, Jamal Lewis at running back. Trent Dilfer, quarterback, was a decent game manager and played well. If we want to be like them, win the Super Bowl like that, the offense needs to at least hold up its end of the bargain just slightly to help win those games. Now, last up on today's show, I promised you to end on a positive note. So let's look at some Texans that deserve more love. It's about time for Pro Bowl voting. So these are some guys who maybe they're not at the top of your mind for Pro Bowl voting or, who are the best players on the Texans right now. But I think they deserve a little bit more love. First up, Titus Howard. And I know I just said the Texans offensive line didn't do that well up against the Chiefs, but I will say this. Shout out to Titus Howard for his play overall this season. And just overall, his time being a Texan, he can never just stay in one spot. The Texans always move him around. He is that Swiss Army knife on the offensive line, and wherever the Texans need him, they've moved him. He's played every single position for the Texans besides center. And he started at right tackle, and, he got paid to be a right tackle. He said, I think my best position is right tackle for Titus Howard, and I truly believe that's the case for him. Like, he feels the most comfortable at right tackle. But out of necessity, they moved him to left guard this year. And since moving to guard, per PFF, he's been awesome. 84.1 pass blocking grade. That's fourth amongst offensive guards. 2 pressures, 0 sacks, a 99.1 pass blocking efficiency, and an 87.3 pass blocking grade right there. So, and all these stats, I will have to say, from Jacob, a.k.a. Texans Jacob on X. Go give him a follow. Does some great stuff. But I mean, he highlighted it right here. Since moving to guard, Titus Howard has been awesome. And maybe, the offensive line as a whole hasn't come together, but I really do have to commend Titus Howard for him being able, not only the flexibility to move along the offensive line, but the unselfishness to say, hey, I know it's not my best position, but if this helps the team out the most, I'll go ahead and do it. That's why he's earning a Pro Bowl vote, in my opinion. Next up, Dalton Schultz. And I will say, at times, pass blocking, run blocking, it is, a little bit, it's a little bit annoying here and there with Dalton Schultz. But overall, I thought he's been a great safety blanket for C.J. Stroud and Davis Mills whenever he's been starting. And, he doesn't give you the splash plays. Probably should have a touchdown from that Chiefs game. I thought it was a BS illegal shift that they called on the Texans. But overall, he's been really good for the Texans. In terms of tight ends this year, he is third in receptions in the entire NFL in terms of tight ends, ninth in receiving yards. He's been really good for the Texans when they need him, when they need a first down, when they need to get C.J. Stroud or Davis Mills going, especially on that play action boot, that spider two wide banana that we all like to call, where the quarterback rolls out and then you have the tight end in the flat. He's been awesome in that, and then picking up extra yardage. I think Dalton Schultz deserves a little bit more credit for how well he's played for the Texans this season. Next up, Jalen Petrie. And this one, I think a lot of Texans fans would agree with. Jalen Petrie deserves more love this season. Remember earlier in the year when the Texans cut C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Well, the reason for that is because he wasn't happy with how he was being used and felt he deserved a starting spot over one person in particular, and that's Jalen Petrie. He plays this nickel star role for the Texans as a, pseudo third linebacker, and he plays it, I think, better than anybody else in the NFL. In 10 games played this year for Jalen Petrie, 55 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 9 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, and a QB rating when targeted of 45.4. Simply said, Jalen Petrie has been a stud for this Texans team. And I think DeMeco Ryans made the right call in going with Jalen Petrie over keeping C.J. Gardner-Johnson and appeasing him, because Petrie has shown out this year for the Houston Texans. Maybe one of the best signings the Texans made this offseason. All right, next up, let's talk about Tommy Togai. Somebody who I think deserves more love, especially with everything that's going on around the Texans this past week, with Tim Settle being out for the remainder of the season. Tommy Togai has stepped up. He has stepped up big time. He has looked really good for this Texans defense. Not only run stuffing on the interior, but also getting a pass rush at that nose tackle spot. 41 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss this season for Tommy Togai. And he's somebody who, at the beginning of the year, Nick Caserio extended him. He went ahead and gave him a contract extension for next season already. And we were all kind of scratching our head with oh, wow, really? Tommy Togai? We already have so many defensive tackles. But it's shown why the Texans have a lot of faith in this young kid right here, because he has absolutely stepped up and shown up for this Texans squad on the interior. And a lot of times, nose tackles, defensive tackles, the numbers don't jump off the page for you, but the presence that he's had on the interior and his ability to shed blocks and be a interior pass rusher has been amazing for this Texans defense, especially with the guys on the outside, Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr. He's been somebody who's played very well on the interior of the defensive line this year for the Houston Texans. One more player that I think deserves a little bit more love, Henry To'oTo'o. We all talk about Azeez Al-Shaair for good reason. He's been awesome this year for the Houston Texans. Henry To'oTo'o has been really good this year too. And we all ask, where's Christian Harris? Where's Christian Harris been? Why can't Christian Harris get on the field? Because this guy, Henry To'oTo'o, has been playing so well for this Texans team. He is the second linebacker. I would say he's ahead of E.J. Speed on this Texans depth chart. He's played really well. The third-year player out of Alabama. And the one thing we know, DeMeco Ryans, a former linebacker, the one thing he can do is coach up linebackers. And he's coached up Henry To'oTo'o really well. His ability to get in the backfield, 7 tackles for loss this season, he has been a menace, especially, being able to shoot the gaps, play, as a guy who can really play sideline to sideline, stop the run. I think he is a big part of this Texans defense as well, a big part of this Texans linebacking core. And I went ahead and made this tweet. to show these 5 guys some love. So this is how I'm going to end today's video. If you made it to the end of today's video, I'm going to know because I need everybody who made it to the end of today's video, go give this tweet a retweet so we can give a Pro Bowl vote to Titus Howard, Dalton Schultz, Jalen Petrie, Tommy Togai, and Henry To'oTo'o. That's how I'll know that you made it to the end of today's video. That link is going to be in the comment section of today's show. If you made it to the end, give it a like, give it a retweet so I know who the real ones are and who made it to the end of today's video.